The final image of Revelation isn't fire, it's a tree. And not just any tree, a tree producing medicine for the nations. What if I told you that the number 7 appears over 50 times in Revelation in a hidden mathematical pattern? And when you crack it, the entire book transforms from a confusing prophecy into a perfectly structured roadmap? Most people read Revelation and see chaos, beasts, and destruction, but buried in its pages are patterns so precise that once you see them, you can never read this book the same way again. And here's why this matters. The patterns in Revelation give you a framework for reading every crisis in your life, every headline that makes you panic, every moment the world feels out of control. Once you see the code, you'll see it everywhere. Today, I'm showing you 7 hidden gems scholars rarely discuss. And by the end, you'll understand why this book might be far more hopeful than you ever imagined. But first, we need to talk about why these gems are hidden in the first place. Think of this book like a wartime transmission. During World War II, the Navajo code talkers used their native language to send military secrets because the enemy couldn't crack it. Revelation works the exact same way. In 95 AD, John was writing to 7 churches facing execution under the Roman Empire. He couldn't write, "Rome is evil, and God will destroy it." If Roman authorities intercepted that letter, those churches would be wiped out immediately. So John used apocalyptic imagery, a code his readers would instantly understand, but outsiders would find baffling. The first rule of reading Revelation: it communicates primarily through symbol, not modern literalism. The monsters, the beasts, the dragons, these aren't creatures from a sci-fi movie. They're political and spiritual realities that John's original audience would have immediately recognized. Once you stop reading it like a newspaper predicting future disasters and start reading it like a code written for insiders, the golden knowledge begins to surface. The number 7 is the heartbeat of this book. And in ancient Hebrew culture, 7 wasn't just a number. It meant divine completion, perfection, wholeness. But here's the gem most people miss. The seals, trumpets, and bowls aren't a straight timeline where disaster 1 happens, then disaster 2, then disaster 3 in chronological order. Look at what happens when you overlay these 3 cycles. You'll notice they don't just follow each other, they echo each other. One compelling way to read this is as the same events seen from 3 different camera angles. Let me show you how this works with one concrete example. The 6th seal describes cosmic signs. The sun goes dark, the moon turns blood red, stars fall from the sky, and people hide in caves crying out, "The great day of wrath has come." The 6th trumpet describes a massive army of 200 million soldiers being released to kill 1/3 of mankind. Then, the 6th bowl describes the kings of the earth gathering their armies at a place called Armageddon for the final battle. Same event, 3 perspectives. The cosmic disruption, the seal, triggers human military response. The trumpet, leading to the final confrontation. The bowl. They're nested like Russian dolls. The 7 trumpets. The 7th trumpet announces the 7 bowls. Each cycle intensifies and adds more detail to the previous one. Why does this matter? Because it means history isn't a spiral into chaos. It's a symphony where every note, every movement, every crescendo is under the architect's control. It's not about random disaster, it's about divine precision. And here's why this matters to you right now. When you're watching the news and it feels like the world is spiraling, when every headline seems worse than the last, when your social media feed is an endless scroll of crisis after crisis, this structure is telling you something critical. It's not linear. You're not on a one-way train to destruction. These cycles repeat, they overlap, they echo, and every single cycle is under the conductor's control. What feels like chaos to you is architecture to God. When you see this pattern, you realize God's plan isn't chaotic. It's perfect and complete. But if God's plan is that perfect, why does evil seem so powerful? Why do the villains in this story look like they're winning? That question leads us to the second gem, and it's one of the darkest and most comforting patterns in the entire book. In chapter 13, John introduces three villains: a dragon, a beast from the sea, and a beast from the earth. Most people see random monsters. John's original audience saw a dark parody, an unholy trinity mocking the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Here's the side-by-side comparison. The dragon, Satan, mimics God the Father. He's presented as the source of power and authority, but it's all stolen and corrupted. The beast from the sea mimics Jesus Christ. In verse 3, this beast has a mortal wound that's been healed, a dark counterfeit of Christ's death and resurrection. And just like people worship Jesus, people worship this beast. The beast from the earth, the false prophet, mimics the Holy Spirit. Just as the Spirit points people to worship Jesus, this false prophet performs signs and wonders to make people worship the first beast. Here's the hidden gem. Evil cannot create, it can only corrupt. Satan doesn't have original ideas. He can't build his own kingdom from scratch with new concepts. So he creates a twisted, inferior copy of God's perfect design, a bootleg trinity that mimics the real thing because it has no original power. The copy can never defeat the original. And here's why this matters today. Anything in your life that demands your complete allegiance, promises ultimate fulfillment, and can't be questioned. Whether it's a political movement, a social media algorithm that controls your attention, or a consumer brand that defines your identity, is operating like a counterfeit God. John is showing us the pattern of how evil works in every generation so we can recognize it. Every false system is just a weak imitation trying to replace the real God. For John's readers facing Rome, where emperors literally claimed to be gods and demanded worship, this was a life-or-death revelation. But the principle still applies today. And here's what this means for you. If you can spot the pattern, if you can see the counterfeit for what it is, it loses its power over you. The algorithm can't control you if you see it as a false prophet. The political movement can't own your soul if you recognize it as a beast demanding worship. The brand can't define your identity if you see through the imitation. The pattern reveals the trap. And once you see it, you're free. But there's something even more radical happening in this book. John isn't just showing us counterfeits to avoid. He's completely flipping our expectations about what victory even looks like. And that brings us to one of the most beautiful patterns in all of Scripture. The 144,000 isn't a literal exclusive club. This is one of the most misunderstood passages in all of Scripture. And the hidden gem here completely transforms it. In chapter 7, John first hears about 144,000 from the tribes of Israel, 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes. That's 12 times 1,000. Every number here is symbolic of completeness and wholeness. But here's the detail most people miss. Immediately after hearing about the 144,000, John sees something completely different. He sees a great multitude that no one could number, from every nation, from all tribes and peoples and languages. Wait, which is it? 144,000 or an infinite crowd? Many scholars understand this as the same group, described two different ways. John hears the church described in Old Testament Jewish military terms: tribes, sealing, census, Israel. This represents the continuity of God's people throughout history. But when he sees them, he sees a diverse, international, countless multitude. This represents the reality of the church after Jesus, multicultural, multi-ethnic, too numerous to count. And this hear versus see pattern repeats throughout the book. In chapter 5, John hears about the Lion of Judah, the conquering warrior king everyone expected, the military Messiah who would overthrow Rome. But when he turns to look, he sees a lamb looking as if it had been slain. He hears the lion. He sees the lamb. The expected path to victory was claws, violence, and military conquest. But the actual path to victory is sacrifice, suffering, and self-giving love. John is constantly subverting our expectations, showing us that God's ways are radically different from human assumptions. Victory doesn't come through domination. It comes through laying down your life for others. This changes everything. The victory you're waiting for, it already happened. Not through the violence you expected, but through a sacrifice so radical it looked like defeat. And that same pattern, losing your life to find it, dying to live, last becoming first, that's the code running through your entire faith. It's the pattern of the cross. It's the pattern of the resurrection. It's the pattern of how God actually works in the world. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every time you hear someone promise victory through power, you'll remember the Lamb. Every time someone says the answer is domination, you'll see the wounds that won. The hear-see pattern isn't just about revelation. It's about how you read reality itself. Now, you might be thinking, if God's victory comes through sacrifice, if the Lamb defeats the dragon, if the center is worship and not chaos, where is all of this in the book? Where's the proof? That's what the next gem reveals, and it's the most brilliant structural move in all of biblical literature. All right, pause for a second. You've just learned that Revelation uses mathematical patterns, dark parodies, and visual paradoxes to communicate its message. But all of that is preparation for what I'm about to show you, the literal center of the book, the structural heart where everything makes sense. This next gem completely changes how you read every chapter. Here's something mind-blowing about Revelation's structure. The entire book is built like a mirror. The beginning echoes the end. The second section echoes the second to last. Everything points to the exact center. Picture it like climbing a mountain. You start at the base, the 7 churches. You climb up through the seals, the trumpets, the chaos, the beasts, the disasters. These are the slopes of the mountain, and they're shaking. There's violence, judgment, cosmic upheaval. But when you reach the peak, the absolute center of the book, there's perfect stillness. Chapters 4 and 5, the throne room. At the center of Revelation isn't destruction, it's worship. At the center isn't chaos, it's the Lamb on the throne receiving praise from every creature in heaven, on earth, under the earth, and in the sea. The elders cast their crowns before the throne. The living creatures never stop saying, "Holy, holy, holy." The angels number in the millions, all declaring, "Worthy is the Lamb who was slain." John is architecting the book to show you something profound. The edges of the world may be shaking. Empires may rise and fall. Disasters may come and go. But the center is occupied. The center is stable. The center never moves. No matter what's happening on earth, no matter how chaotic the news cycle, how unstable the political situation, how terrifying the global events, God is seated, not pacing, not panicking, not scrambling to figure things out. Seated, in control. This structural design proves that even the judgments, even the chaos, even the scary stuff on the edges, it all serves the purposes of the one at the center. It's all under his authority. Let that sink in for a second. Whatever is shaking in your life right now, whatever feels unstable, whatever keeps you up at night, whatever headline made your stomach drop this morning, It's happening on the slopes. And the slopes shake. That's what they do. But the center holds. God isn't reacting to the news. He's not shocked by the crisis. He's not scrambling to come up with plan B. He's seated. Throne room, worship, stability. The architecture of the book is telling you. The edges shake, but the center holds. And if you can get to the center, if you can see past the chaos on the slopes and fix your eyes on the throne, you'll find the only stable point in a shaking world. This isn't a book about the end of the world. It's a book about who rules the world, even when everything looks like it's falling apart. And if God is in control, if the center holds, if the Lamb has already won, then what about the empires that look unbeatable right now? What about the powers that seem eternal, the systems that appear unshakable? John had an answer for his readers facing Rome, and it's one of the most dangerous things ever written. Who is Babylon? This is where John gets dangerously specific, and the clues he gives are explosive. First clue, in chapter 17, verse 9, John writes, "The 7 heads are 7 hills on which the woman sits." In the first century, everyone knew Rome as the city on 7 hills. It was on their coins, in their poetry, part of their civic identity. When John said 7 hills, his readers immediately knew Babylon equals Rome. But here's the detail that seals it, the smoking gun most people miss. The woman is described holding a golden cup full of abominations. Now here's the history that makes this explosive. In 70 AD, just 25 years before John wrote Revelation, the Roman general Titus led his armies to destroy Jerusalem. They burned the Jewish temple to the ground and looted it. The Romans stole the sacred golden vessels that were used in temple worship, the lampstand, the table of showbread, the incense altar. These weren't just valuable objects. They were holy, set apart for God's presence. The Romans paraded them through the streets of Rome in a triumphal procession, mocking the Jewish people. It was the ultimate act of blasphemy. They took objects meant for worshiping the true God and used them in pagan rituals. When John describes Babylon holding a golden cup full of abominations, his readers would have immediately pictured those stolen temple vessels. Rome isn't just another empire. Rome is the nation that literally broke into God's house, stole the sacred objects, and used them to worship false gods. That's why she's described as drunk on the blood of the saints, a reference to the Christians Rome had executed, including Peter and Paul. John calls her Babylon because, just like ancient Babylon destroyed the first temple in 586 BC and carried God's people into exile, Rome destroyed the second temple and scattered the Jewish people. But here's the hidden gem within this revelation. Throughout chapters 17 and 18, John describes Babylon as powerful, wealthy, and seemingly invincible. Merchants grow rich from her excess. Kings make political alliances with her. She sits as a queen saying, "I will never mourn." She looks eternal, unshakable, permanent. And then, in 1 hour, she falls. Gone. John is sending a critical message to persecuted Christians. The empire that looks eternal is actually temporary. Rome seems all-powerful right now, but from God's perspective, it's already defeated. Its days are numbered. And this wasn't just true for Rome. It's a pattern that repeats throughout history. Babylon fell, Persia fell, Greece fell, Rome fell, the British Empire fell, the Soviet Union fell. Every empire that sets itself up as ultimate reality, that demands absolute allegiance, that opposes God's people, every Babylon eventually collapses. The hidden gem. No matter how permanent the current power structure seems, it's temporary. Only God's kingdom is eternal. And here is what that means for you. Whatever Babylon you're facing, whatever system feels too big to fail, whatever structure seems unshakable, whatever power looks eternal, it's not. It's already falling. You just can't see it yet. The empire that executed John's friends looked invincible. 30 years later, it was crumbling. 300 years later, it was Christian. The power that seems permanent in your lifetime is a vapor in God's timeline. 1 hour, that's all it takes. So when you're facing a Babylon, when the system seems rigged, when the powers seem unstoppable, when injustice looks permanent, remember, it's already falling. You're just watching it in slow motion. But if Babylon falls, if every empire collapses, if all temporal power is temporary, what comes next? That's where the final gem takes us, and it's the most beautiful reversal in the entire Bible. The final gem completely transforms the ending of Revelation, and it's the most important one of all. Most people think Revelation is about escaping Earth and going up to heaven when you die. The common image is saints floating up to some spiritual realm in the clouds while the physical world burns below. But read chapter 21 carefully. That's not what John describes at all. John sees a new heaven and a new earth. The old heaven and earth have passed away, not destroyed into nothing, but renewed, transformed, made new. Then he sees the holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. Catch the direction of movement? It's down, not up. The city doesn't stay in heaven waiting for us to come up. It comes from heaven to earth. Heaven and earth don't stay separate. They merge. They become one unified reality again. This is a restoration of Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth as one reality where He walked with humanity in the Garden of Eden. There was no separation between the physical and spiritual realms. Heaven and earth overlapped. Sin shattered that unity and separated heaven from earth. The entire biblical story, Genesis to Revelation, is about God's plan to reunite them, to heal the separation, to restore what was broken. Revelation isn't an escape plan, it's a restoration plan. Look at the specific details John includes. The New Jerusalem has streets made of gold, so pure it's transparent like glass. There's a river of life flowing from God's throne. On both sides of the river is the tree of life, producing 12 kinds of fruit, one for each month, with leaves for the healing of the nations. There are kings who bring their glory into the city. There are nations that walk by its light. There's culture, diversity, beauty, architecture, ongoing life. This isn't a ghostly, ethereal, spiritual-only realm. This is a physical reality made perfect. In verse 3, a loud voice from the throne says, "Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and He will dwell with them. They will be His people, and God Himself will be with them and be their God." God doesn't evacuate us from creation. He moves back into creation with us, forever. Verse 4, He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. The Garden of Eden from Genesis reappears as a garden city in Revelation. The tree of life that was lost in Genesis 3 is restored in Revelation 22. The river of life flows again. Humanity's original purpose, to live in God's presence, to cultivate creation, to reflect His glory, is finally fulfilled without the corruption of sin. For John's readers suffering under Rome, facing execution, economic hardship, persecution, watching their friends die for their faith, this was revolutionary hope. Their suffering wasn't meaningless. History was moving toward this moment when God would make all things new. Not destroy everything and start over. Make all things new. Think about what that means. Every act of beauty you create, it's not wasted. Every moment of justice you fight for, it's not lost. Every piece of culture, every work of art, every garden you plant, every relationship you build, if it reflects God's glory, it's not temporary. It's part of the restoration. It's a preview of the new creation. God isn't abandoning this world. He's renewing it. And you get to participate in that renewal right now. Every time you choose beauty over ugliness, order over chaos, love over hate, you're acting out the downward movement. You're bringing heaven to earth. You're living the ending. So after everything we've seen, the nested cycles, the dark parodies, the lion who is a lamb, the center that holds, the empires that fall, the city that descends, what does it all mean? What are we supposed to do with these 7 gems? These 7 gems prove that Revelation is a book of hope, not horror. It shows us 3 unshakable truths. First, evil is temporary. Babylon falls. Every empire that opposes God collapses. The counterfeit Trinity has no original power. 1 hour, that's all it takes. Second, victory is certain. The Lamb is already on the throne. The center holds. God is seated in control, orchestrating history with mathematical precision. The edges shake, but the center never moves. Third, the ending is beautiful. The New Jerusalem descends. Heaven and earth merge. God moves back in with us to heal the world, make all things new. That's not horror. That's hope. But here's what I want you to remember. Here's the image I want burned into your mind when you close this video. The final image of Revelation isn't what most people think. It's not fire raining from the sky. It's not the earth being destroyed. It's not judgment or wrath or cosmic disaster. It's a tree. The tree of life, standing beside a river, its roots going deep into the renewed earth, its branches spreading wide over the city. And on those branches, 12 kinds of fruit. 1 for every month, provision that never runs out, abundance without end. And John says this specifically. Pay attention to this detail. The leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. Not for individuals, for nations, plural, diverse, cultural, ongoing. The last thing God shows John isn't destruction, it's medicine. Not just personal salvation, global restoration, the healing of everything that's broken in the world. And if that's where the story ends, if the final image is a tree producing medicine for the world, then maybe the middle isn't as dark as you thought. Maybe the chaos on the slopes is serving the stability at the center. Maybe the empires that fall make room for the kingdom that rises. Maybe the suffering you're enduring right now is part of a story that ends with healing. Because if the ending is that beautiful, if the last thing you see is leaves for the healing of nations, then the 7 gems we've uncovered aren't just interesting biblical patterns. They're a map, a code, a way of seeing the world that changes everything. The nested cycles teach you that chaos is architecture. The Unholy Trinity teaches you to spot the counterfeits. The hear-see pattern teaches you that victory looks like sacrifice. The structural center teaches you that God is seated while the world shakes. The fallen Babylon teaches you that every empire is temporary. The downward movement teaches you that God isn't abandoning creation. He's renewing it. And once you see these patterns, once you crack the code, you'll never read Revelation the same way again. You'll never read the world the same way again. Because if the tree of life is producing medicine, then healing is coming. For you, for your city, for the nations. And that tree? It was always there. From Genesis to Revelation, lost in the fall, restored in the end, the same tree, the same hope. The same God who walked in the garden with Adam is the same God who dwells in the city with the nations. He never left. He's just been working on the restoration the whole time. Now that you've seen the code here, now that you understand how Revelation ends, you're ready to see where it all began. The patterns in Revelation didn't start in Revelation. They started in the very first chapters of Genesis. The tree was there. The garden was there. The downward movement was there. Click here to see the hidden patterns in Genesis that set this whole story in motion. Because once you see how it begins, the ending makes even more sense. I'll see you there.